All right. So if you remember, last week when we met, we were having some discussion about the definitions of economics, that how the discipline of economics has evolved over time. It started with wealth, 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 to the Marshallian view of that, no, it's not the wealth which is of paramount importance. It's the man, the human beings are more important. And then comes a third economist. His name is Robbins. And he says that, you know what, you are talking too much about welfare, welfare, welfare. And he's saying that these two extremes, wealth and welfare, are very extremes. I mean, that's not the core job of economics. Economics deals with some realities. And the biggest reality is that we have unlimited wants, but the means to achieve them, to fulfill them, are very limited. So you always, I mean, nobody, you can be billionaire, trillionaire, zillionaire, whosoever you become, there would be some limit to which your resources allow you to undertake some venture. So you always have a problem of choice. You don't never have infinite resources. I'm not saying that you can have lots of resources, but even those lots of resources are also limited resources. The limit could be anything, right? So the idea is that, the reality is that we have to deal with the scarcity. And that is why Robbins gave this new way of thinking that economics is actually a science of scarcity. We have to deal with the scarcity. On the one hand, we have unlimited requirements. On the other hand, we have very limited resources. Isn't it a reality that you have unlimited choices and you have the limited resources in every way? It's not just economic. Even in our relationships, in our social setup, we have so many choices, but we can't fulfill. There's always a problem of choice. There's always a trade-off that you choose something in favor of something else. And that argument is applicable to economics as well, that we have a problem of choice. We have to make this. And that's what a rational firm decides. You might produce how much? Well, you can produce as much as you want, but there's a limit of resources. Do you have enough raw material? Do you have enough demand in the market? Does your technological know-how allow you to increase your production? Okay, so there's always a limit. Same way as a consumer, when you go for shopping, you can be dazzled by all those consumerism, all the fantastic gadgets and the dresses and whatever. There are plenty of things which can attract or distract you. Okay, but can you get all of them? I guess no. You have to check your wallet. Okay, so it's a reality that we live with a situation where we have to deal with this science of scarcity. Before I discuss this concept of opportunity cost, I want to show you a graphic which is known as production possibility curve. Okay, so here you can see in the picture that, let's imagine that we are living in a very simplified world where economy can only produce two things. Of course, you can have infinite, but then in the 3D it's difficult to show. So I'm taking a very oversimplified example. So here, let's say, if a country, an economy, put all its resources, then the maximum food it can produce is 8 units. And if all these resources are producing nothing, no food, and all these resources are diverted on clothing, the maximum cloth production can be this. And then in between, when I join these 2 points, and it makes the curve, I will tell you why it's a curve. You could argue that you could argue, you can argue, could argue why this curve is not like this.
It's not a curve.
Or why this curve is not a straight line. You're right. So this relationship, why it looks like this only. I'll come to this point. There's a reason for it, that why this is done on purpose. I have done it purposefully. Yeah, so it's going on here. So instead of a straight line, this is a curve. And here you can see that on the red line, you can produce various combinations of food and clothing. If you go along, if you are somewhere here on the upper stretch of this curve, you can see that there is a 1 unit of clothing and 7 or maybe 7.5 units of food. But as you increase the production of clothing, the production of food goes down, basically. So if you are somewhere here, you are producing more clothing than food. But if you are somewhere here, you are producing more food than clothing. First of all, please let me know, is this phenomena a reality or it's just fiction? Because the argument is that, imagine a country which can only make 2 products. Well, this picture, this argument is valid for millions of products also, but let's keep it simple. That let's assume that a country can only manufacture or produce 2 things with all its resources, all the resources of the country. And if we employ all the resources on food, the maximum production is this. It means 0 clothing. And if we divert all the resources on clothing, but no food, then maximum production of clothing can be here. But these are very extreme situations. We need food and clothing both. All right. So when we have different combinations of food and clothing, then all these points are lying on this curve. And when we join all these points, this curve is called as production possibility curve. The production possibility curve tells you different combinations. If you travel from this point to this point, all the way down here or backwards, you can have infinite dots on this red thick line. So it shows that a country have a choice to choose more food, less clothes, or more clothes, less food. But a country doesn't have the luxury of having more food and more clothing at the same time, because the resources are scarce. Okay, but one thing is there: you choose more food than clothing, or you choose more clothing than food. It depends upon the country's requirement. That's where the policy, economic policy, comes in between, in the picture. What are the country's priorities? Okay, so depending upon the demand, depending upon the people's priorities, the nation decides, the economy decides, the leaders of the economy, they decide, should they be somewhere here or somewhere here, or they should be in between. But the point I'm trying to echo here, emphasize here, is that X, Y, and Z These are the ideal points. It shows at least you can be here or here or here. We can fight, we can debate. Oh, why the country is producing more clothing and less food and vice versa. But one thing is for sure, that within the given supply of resources, these are the maximum productions the country can do. Do you agree or not? If you have labor and capital, and the only two choices the country has is to produce clothing and food, then on the red line, all the points show, all these combinations show that you have employed your resources so efficiently that the production cannot be more than this. Let's say X. X is six food and 4 clothing. Now 6 and 4. It shows that if you want to choose X combination of food and clothing, the maximum food you can have is 6 and the maximum clothing you can have is 4 in the given circumstances, in the given resource supply, in the given technological situation, in the given whatever, circumstances. You cannot make it 7 to 4 or 7 to 5. You can't have 7 food and 5 clothing at the same time. And if you want to have more clothing, guess what? You have to give up food. Compare X and Y. Compare X and Y. When you move from X to Y, what happened? You are withdrawing resources from food, pushing them to the clothing. There's more clothing production, but in the end of the day, we have lesser food production. And if you want even more clothing, all right, then again you withdraw 1 unit of resources, you push them towards more clothing, all right, but guess what? Then you have to give up. If you gain 1 additional unit of clothing, you have to give up some food as well. But one thing is for sure, that you can never go beyond. You can never be here. You can never be here. Look at the cursor. You can never be here. Because your resource endowments, your resource supply never lets you go. This is like a limit. Like, for example, don't we face this dilemma in our kitchen budget? We have put 100 euros for average weekly kitchen budget, for example, grocery, all right? You have different combinations. And when you are doing the shopping, you're counting the price in the head and you find that, oh dear, I think my bill would be around 105 and I will not be able to buy milk carton. All right, then you find that I think we have taken too much of cheese. All right, put it back. Now I have saved some money and this I can spend to buy an additional carton of milk. Guess what? The amount of cheese you put back in the shelf to pick 1 additional carton of milk is called opportunity cost. There is a cost of milk carton, but that is the economic cost. That's the price cost, But the opportunity cost is your sort of mental, it's in your head. It's like a sacrifice. The opportunity cost of 1 additional carton of milk is equal to the number of packets of cheese which you have given back to the shelf. It's a choice. You made a choice. You're lucky to have made a choice, but you are not so lucky to have unlimited resources. Within the frame of your resource availability, you are making choice. So you can fiddle between too much of cheese and less milk, or too much of milk but less cheese, and likewise. So when you are playing with different combinations, then what you do? You pick one more, but you give up the other. The amount of commodity you give up to get the additional unit of something is called the opportunity cost. Same way, imagine you work in a store, and let's say your weekly your hourly wage is 11 euros. Is it too high? It's fine, I think 11 is okay, yeah. And let's say your lecture is in the morning and it clashes at the same time when you have your shift, your job. And the lecture would be lasting 2 hours. It means if you attend lecture, you would sacrifice 22 euros. It means the opportunity cost of attending economics lecture, well, I wish it's more, let's say ordinary lecture, any lecture. So the economic cost of attending the lecture is 22 euros. On the contrary, if you do your shift, then the amount of, and imagine that I don't upload videos on YouTube, then what you lose in terms of contents, in terms of discussion or whatever, if you think it's valuable, that is your opportunity cost. The amount that you lose, the knowledge, the information that you lose. That's why I said that opportunity cost is not just monetary cost, it's also a kind of non-monetary. Now, how can you calculate the amount of knowledge you missed out by not attending the lecture? But you make a sacrifice, you make a choice. Nobody forced you, nobody came that, hey, if you don't attend the lecture, you would be prosecuted. No, nobody, there's no legal penalty upon you. You make a choice. But at the same time, you have to live with the limitation that this choice is not unlimited choice. We have, the resources are limited. So we have to decide between what to pick up, what not to pick up. So this is called the phenomena. So the first proper theory which you are learning now is the science of scarcity, economics of scarcity. And in the economics of scarcity, we learn the first concept, the production possibility curve. The production possibility curve shows the different combination of different goods which you can produce with the given amount of resources. So therefore, all the points on the production possibility curve are optimum points. Optimum points means that choosing more clothes or more food is a different matter, but at least one thing is for sure, that these are the maximum productions which you can do. So I have no hesitation in saying that you are not wasting anything. So all the resources are fully utilized. Yes, sir.
What if you don't economics?
When it comes to measuring opportunity cost, there can be both monetary and non-monetary measures. Sometimes there are certain situations when having a non-monetary measure is a little bit difficult, right? But otherwise, yes, you're right. You can measure in the monetary unit. Now, I want you to observe this picture. And I want you to find, give somebody should give me the reason. When we move from X to Y, only focus on X and Y. When we move from X to Y, we have one extra unit of clothing, yeah? And we give up 1 unit of food. Can you see it? When you move from X to Y, you have 1 extra unit of clothing, but you are sacrificing 1 unit of food. But when you move from Y to Z, you are having 1 additional unit of clothing, but here your amount of sacrifice is not 1 but 2. So I can have a conjecture that if you move from here to here, let's say there is a X, Y, Z, and let's say Z1. Here you have 1 extra unit of clothing, but here you would give up not 2 but 3. units of food. Whereas in my fictitious straight line, because we all know a little bit maths, we all know that the equation, the slope of the straight line remain constant. So as you move from X to Y, imagine this curve was, I take a pause now, wait a second. Maybe I shall try to show it here, perhaps. I can try at least. If this was your production possibility curve, and you want to move from X to Y, and Y to Z, then the amount of sacrifice, but if yeah, I can, but actually I can't. Because otherwise it will only show my picture, not the board. That's the thing. But all right, I can do it here, no problem. For instance, oh yes, I can. So let's use technology. So if this was the curve, now here you can see that sorry about my, there is a science of calligraphy, calligraphy, and the opposite is called cacography. Cacography, yeah, and I'm the champion of cacography. You can see it, undisputed champion of cacography. So here you can see that as you go down, as you move from clothing or food to clothing, the amount of food you sacrifice is nearly equal, because if you remember your high school maths, there is an equation of straight line, and on that equation, the slope is constant. But it's a problem. What did we do?
New share.
New share, yeah. The screen, yeah, I need to share. Yeah, here we are. But here you see that your sacrifice is increasing every time you move from clothing to from food to clothing. Yeah. I'll give you a few minutes, and I want to know what is wrong with this curve. Why your production possibility curve cannot be like this, and why it has to be. Is it called convex to the origin? It's convex to the origin. So why is so that the production possibility curve is not a straight line, but convex to the origin? And that's true. That's a fact. That this is reality. This is not a reality. Now you have to collect the arguments. Why is this a reality and why not this? Did you get my question? There is economic growth. When you see this picture, we assume that we are living in an absolutely static economy. Nothing is changing. I mean, we are doing some cosmetic things, sometimes more food, more clothing, that's it. But there is no real economic growth. But if you see this picture, you see that, okay, this is the original, let's assume. This is the original production possibility curve, but we are living in dynamic system. We generate more resources. You not only produce more natural resources, but you also produce more man-made sources. You get more energy from gasoline. Later on, you develop nuclear energy. Then you have the wind, solar energy, and so on and so forth. That capacitates you. That enables you to make more of clothing and at the same time make more of food as well. So what happens? The maximum points of clothing jump here and food. But don't forget, the nature of production possibility curve still remains convex to the origin, because in a given time, no matter how advanced you are, the factors have a limited substitutability. It's a tongue twister, isn't it? Say substitutability 5 times without stammering. Please say it. Who want to try? Substitutability. Yeah. Kuva, great. You are the lucky one. I owe you a chocolate. So it means what? So this journey from blue line to the red line, it shows economic growth. This is the economic. If you have to plot economic growth without any numbers, this is the picture. So this shows economic growth. And if you want to see a very diabolical situation, economy is neither at X nor at Y. Economy is at point V. Here, you are wasting your resources. Can somebody find out why V is not the optimum point? Why is V not the optimum point? Here, the environment. So basically,
at this point, don't we have simply a reduction in food and in clothing?
So this is X, this is Y.
Yeah.
All the points on this red line are optimum points, right? But what happened is that you are neither at X, you're not at X, not at Y, but you're here at V. When you are at V, you know what? You can produce more of X without giving up Y. Can you see it? You can produce more of X without giving up Y, or you can produce more of Y without giving up anything X. So it means that you have a capacity to still utilize your resources. So at V, economy is working inefficiently. It's an inefficient economy. Some time ago, one of my professors, he discussed, he's an old professor, and he was during 70s, mid 70s or late 70s, he traveled to Saudi Arabia. And if you notice, the 70s of the decade of 70 was the oil boom time. All these Gulf countries, they were getting super rich. They were very backward socially, economically before. And then during 70s, there was a wave of oil. And suddenly those people became rich, super rich, all these sheikhs, buying all those posh cars and everything, and, the luxury and whatnot. And then this professor was traveling, and he was passing through a stretch of road from one city to another city. And there was a stretch on both sides, desert, miles and miles, junkyard of cars, which are not properly even driven. They buy a car, they don't like it. After a few days, they throw in the bin. I don't like it. And there was a discussion about the economic miracles in the conference of the city where this professor was traveling to. And then in the conference, he has a different topic to discuss, but then he changed his topic at the last moment. He said, no, I will have a new topic to discuss. And he said that if you want to see the success of an economy, don't see how much they produce or how much they earn. See how much they waste. So economic success is not in proportion to how much you produce. Rather, the real economic success is in proportion to or inversely proportion to how much you waste. And the resources not utilization is equal to resource wastage. Therefore, any economy which is working below the production possibility curve is an economic crime because you are not using your resources. Now look at this picture, for example, here. Imagine that you are on the blue line and the red line is a distant dream for you because it will go with the time. It takes time before your GDP or your national income goes up. But what if you're here? It means, let alone increasing your output, you are not even utilizing what you are capable of now. Now, this is economic failure. And that reminds me of my professor's words that success of economy is not how much you increase in your wealth production, but how much you waste. It's absolutely unpardonable act that you are not utilizing your resources. Because when you're at V, look at this. Let's say at V point, you are producing this much Y, this much Y, all right. But you know what? For the same Y, instead of this X, you can produce this much X. It means this is the X you are wasting. Alternatively, if you have this X and you produce this Y, guess what? You could produce this much Y. It means this is the range of wastage. This is economic wastage, or if you allow me to say, I will call it, this is the economic crime. It's not the corrupt politicians or the corrupt leaders who we attach this word crime. Even inefficient leaders and inefficient people who run the economy, that they are not less than criminals. So if you have a team of politicians, if you have a team of economic planners who are not letting the economy grow at the rate at which it is capable of, sack them, please, in the first place. Do it fast before it's too late. Even though it's not too late before we finish our lecture. But I let you have some recap today.